Okay, thank you all so much for attending on this hump day at 4 o'clock. So this is our speaking and listening standardisation session. The purpose of this session is to look at aspects of functional skills, speaking and listening assessment for level 1 for level 2, to look at decisions and standardising our decisions to make sure that our candidates are getting the same experience and the same standard of assessment, whether they're being assessed over here or by this assessor or by that assessor. Everybody's getting the same level of assessment. But it's also to look at some examples of good practice and how assessments should look and how they should be run. And then to look at some examples of bad practice as well, in terms of candidates who might not be meeting the criteria. So just very quickly, I'm just going to go through the requirements. So hopefully you should have seen our assessment guidance form already. And I did send it as part of the standardisation task as well. So we're looking at level 1 and level 2 today. So for level 1, there are 2 tasks. The first task is a talk. So it's not called a presentation. So it's not treated as a presentation. There shouldn't be a PowerPoint, for example. It's just a talk where the candidate talks about a subject for 3 to 4 minutes. And then they're asked questions by the other people in the group. So part of the criteria is them being able to communicate the information and use appropriate language. So that's 3.4 and 1.4 and 1.7, excuse me. The first 2 criteria, which is 1.1 and 1.2, is based on them asking others questions on their talks. So they're not assessed on that criteria while they're doing their talk, they're assessed when they're asking others questions. And then 1.3 is their ability to respond effectively to questions that people ask of them. So the time taken for the talk, as I say, is 3 to 4 minutes for them to actually deliver the talk. But then there's obviously some time for questions in there as well. You shouldn't have more than 3 to 5 candidates in a task. So really you're looking at 10 to 15 minutes for that task altogether. Task 2 is a discussion. So again, 4 to 5 candidates, max 5 really, because otherwise it could just go on and on. And they need to talk about a straightforward topic for 10 minutes. So with this being level 1, straightforward topic is the key here. It doesn't need to be anything considered to be sophisticated, just a straightforward topic that they can talk about quite confidently. They need to show that they can discuss the topic, which covers 3.4, that they can communicate their, why do I keep saying 3.4? 1.4, communicate information and ideas and their opinions clearly. So they need to talk about something where they can actually communicate their opinions and express opinions and arguments to support and support them with evidence. So they can't just say their opinion, they need to back up why they think that and give evidence behind it. They also need to show that they can follow and understand the discussion and make contributions. So listening to others and contributing based on what other people have said and responding. And as part of that, respecting the turn taking and interjecting appropriately. So that's 1.8. And then again, using appropriate language for 1.7. As part of that, they should come to a sort of a final outcome for the 5 minutes. So they should talk about what they think in terms of, do they agree, do they disagree, what do they think the final decision is. For level 2, they do a presentation. So as part of that, we should expect to see a PowerPoint, because that's kind of what you normally have for a PowerPoint. Without the PowerPoint, it looks more like the talk that you have in level 1. And very similarly to level 1, some of the criteria is based on them asking questions and then responding to questions. So 2.1 and 2.2 is them asking other people questions based on their presentations. 2.3 is them responding to questions. 2.4 is them asking questions, and 2.5 and 2.7 is them actually during their presentation. So in terms of what they're judged on, actually the presentation as a whole doesn't form the whole, most of the criteria, the majority of the criteria. Actually asking questions is the biggest aspect of it. And the differences between level 1 and level 2 is them being able to ask more pertinent questions, them being use more sophisticated language, and them having topics which they consider to be more sophisticated, so things that they can really give an opinion on, give facts and figures, and back up with evidence. The presentation should be 4 to 5 minutes, and then obviously then there's time for questions at the end. And then task 2 again is a discussion, and it's very similar to level 1. But again, at this level, they are expected to use a range of vocabulary and language, and they need to show that they can move the discussion forward. So whereas in level 1, there's a little bit more lenience on people asking them to give their opinions. On level 2, they should be able to follow the gist of the discussion and interject and make their own contributions in order to move the discussion forward. Okay, any questions about that? So hopefully you've all seen it before, so it shouldn't be anything new. So what we're going to do is I've sent everybody the task beforehand. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at those, but we will have a little look at them now as well. We're not going to obviously watch all of it or watch all of them because that would take too long. So we're going to look at the ones that I sent through, and then at the end we'll discuss whether we think they've met the criteria. I will flick through and skip through some bits as well if I think that we don't really need to watch that bit. Okay, so we're going to start with the level 1. Again, hopefully my computer plays ball. So we're looking at the level 1 talk, and we're looking at Roxana. Okay, please let me know if you cannot hear or see.
This is a Pearson Functional Skills Speaking, Listening and Communicating Assessment. Today,
can you hear that? Sorry, I can't see anyone, so can someone speak?
Yes.
Yeah, cool.
Can you hear that?
Yeah, good for us as well, Jen. All good.
Right, so we're looking at Roxana, who's this lady here.
Today we are doing level 1 talk, question and answer section. My name is Laura.
My name is Roxana.
My name is Genevieve, and I'm going to start off and I'm going to talk about the Disney Vacation Club.
So I'm going to actually skip through 2 questions because she's not involved until a bit later on.
So it's a beautiful immersed sort of feeling in being in Africa and everything else.
Nice.
Do you have any questions?
Which show was your favourite to watch?
Lion King was my favourite, purely because of the style and the animals and the puppeteering of it. Do you want to go next?
Yeah. So last November, I went to Malta for my birthday. I went there for 6 days, and it was my first time going to Malta. I did enjoy it. I had a very nice hotel, but I didn't like the choice of food. They had a lot of seafood. I'm not a big fan of seafood, but I was happy that McDonald's wasn't too far for me. So yeah, I enjoyed that. And yeah, I did a lot of boat riding as well, which was really fun. They have another island you can go to, and according to the local people there, they said there's only about 2 people that live on this island. And yeah, it was really fun. They had a nice food stall, like chicken and chips and the normal food we'd get here, and that was really good as well. I really enjoyed that, and being by the sea for most of the days. Do you have any questions for me?
What was the weather like while you were out there? Was it nice?
So it was quite a mix of weather. It was cold and but it did get warm as well.
So how did you get there?
I went by plane.
And how was the plane journey there?
It was okay. It wasn't. Yeah, it was good. It was good. Do you want to go?
Okay. So I'm going to talk about.
Okay, so again, I'm going to skip through the actual presentation and get to questions.
I'm a big fan of the Lake District, so I do like going there every year, sort of thing. Yeah, do you have any questions?
What's the best way to travel there?
So I say by car, despite the awful traffic, because the train is really expensive. Because I had to go back down by train this time, and I think it was like £100 or something, and it was about 7 hours. So it's just a bit nicer to be in your own car, but the traffic can be horrendous sometimes, unfortunately.
Okay. You mentioned about sort of eating up there and making sure you drink a lot and everything. Yeah. What, I mean, like blisters and things like that. How do you deal with all of that?
I think because we've been doing it, I've been doing it probably for like 15 years. I think your feet kind of not get used to it, but because like you've worn your shoes in so much, and definitely if you buy a new pair of shoes, you have to take them out like around where you live, because obviously 8 hours, and it's definitely like getting good quality socks, because having a blister like 3 hours into like an 8-hour walk is awful. So it's definitely just being prepared, and obviously you have like Compeed in your bag if you do need it as well.
Compeed?
Yeah, like blister plasters.
Oh right, okay.
But there's just like the popular brand ones.
How was the weather?
Yeah, it was really hot. It was, yeah, like I said, we got sunburnt quite a lot up the hills, but yeah.
I think that's a wrap now. So thank you, everybody.
Okay. So let's have a little chat. Sorry. Okay, so we're looking at Roxana. I think let's use, in fact, there's only a few of us here, so we can just talk about it. We'll go around individually. Overall, did she meet the criteria for task 1?
I don't think so.
No?
No. I think going through, I think out of the 5 learning outcomes, are given a 3, possibly even 2. I think the 2, she definitely hasn't achieved probably 1.3 and 1.4. I think it's just very sort of just answers rather than goes into descriptions and details. And obviously she doesn't really sort of interject and like have the conversation like the other 2. It seems to be flowing a bit more, whereas she's just sort of on the outside looking in, really. Yeah, that's sort of my thoughts of it, really.
Yeah, cool. What about you, Abdullah? Do you agree with that?
I was going to say the same thing. So if you look at criteria 1.3, so, responding effectively to detailed questions. So I don't think she's met that, because if I remember this correctly. So when the other lady asked her about how did you get to that place, she said by plane or something. And then the other lady asked her how was the plane journey. She said she was kind of, I think she felt like she was going to go into a bit of detail, and then she just suddenly realized and stopped and said, yeah, it was okay. It was all right. Something. So, that certainly doesn't meet the criteria where, you have to respond effectively to detailed questions and answers. Yeah. So no, agree with Matt there. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So her answers to the questions were too brief, really, weren't they? And in terms of 1.4, I think the main problem was that it was too short. It didn't meet the requirements of 3 to 4 minutes. It was 1 minute something, and she just didn't really talk about a range of topics either.
I was gonna say she could have, because there was potential in that. I mean, she spoke about the thing that she doesn't like seafood, and she said, there was McDonald's and all that. She could have expanded on that a bit to say, there is certain foods that I don't like, and what she likes in McDonald's or stuff. And the other things that she said, there were certain other things that she likes to visit and all that stuff. So I felt like she could have elaborated on that, or expanded on that a bit, but she just chose not to and just kept it brief or something. So yeah, didn't meet the criteria there.
Yeah, excellent. Anybody disagree with that or want to add anything else to that? No? Okay, so I think we're in agreement. She didn't meet 1.3 or 1.4. 1.1, 1.2, she probably did just about meet. She did ask questions based on the information that they gave her. So she was listening and identifying information within that. And she did ask some questions. And actually 1.7, her communication, and she used appropriate language. So I think probably she didn't meet those two, but the other three were okay. Okay, so let's go to the next one. So this is the formal discussion, and we're looking at Genevieve, who calls herself Jenny.
Jem, we can't hear that at the moment.
Oh, sorry. I probably didn't press the button. I was so careful to press it the first time around as well. Let's try that.
Shall I start?
Yeah.
Okay, can you hear that?
Yeah, all good.
Okay,
Yep,
my favourite food
all
is
good.
paella, and my favourite place to eat it is a little restaurant in Quarteira, which is in Portugal, and for about €25 you get a massive plate of shellfish, lobster, all sorts, prawns, everything, mussels, and it feeds about 5 or 6 people. They say it feeds 2, but I mean, my family, we're 5, and we just go and eat it there. It's lovely. I love shellfish. Roxana?
I'm a bit of a sweet tooth, so I like a lot of desserts. Like to visit a lot of dessert restaurants. Anything that's milkshakes, waffles. I love that.
Personally, pasta is my favourite food. I quite like eating it like Zizi's, that sort of place, going for lunch with friends, as it's like not too bad for a meal to go out. I also quite like cooking at home. It's quite an easy thing to make, especially when you're in a bit of a rush.
What would be your favourite sauce then?
I quite like a bolognese sauce, but I don't eat meat that often, so I kind of make it with lentils instead of mince, which is quite a nice alternative.
Do you like going to Vapiano's?
I've never heard of that. So
It's a really good pasta place. You should try it out.
I'll have to try it out one day.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. What do you like to cook at home?
I like fish pie. So my husband's English, and being Portuguese, we're sort of very different taste buds. And I grew up with a lot of spice, so I like biryanis and things like that as well. If I do a takeaway, but cooking at home, it's very simple food. So fish pie. There's a special dish his mum used to cook called bacon pud, and it's sort of like a suet pastry with bacon and sausage and onions, and then steamed, and he loves that. Can't stand it, but he loves it, so I cook that quite often.
Nice.
Yeah. Do you do any other sort of cooking?
Yeah, so a lot of, like you said, biryani. I like cooking biryani as well. How spicy do you like your biryanis?
Spicy.
Very spicy.
10 chilies at least.
Surprisingly, I don't like very spicy foods. I'm a bit of a mild one. What about yourself?
I don't mind spicy food. At my house, most Saturdays, my dad will make a curry, so it's quite nice. So I've kind of got a lot used to it because of that. So I can tolerate spicy food, but I have to be definitely in the mood for it.
But how spicy?
I don't really know. Probably like medium to very, but not like proper spicy. I'd probably draw the line at.
So other than curries, what other sort of dishes do you like to cook and try out? What's the most unusual dish you've
My
had?
mum makes quite, I don't know if it's weird, but everyone I know thinks it's weird. Like, you know, like shepherd's pie, because I'm not a big fan of mashed potatoes, she puts macaroni cheese on the top, and we call it macaroni shepherd's pie.
Interesting.
It is very interesting, but I think it's probably definitely one of my favourite meals, because the restaurant makes it a bit difficult for her, because she normally just has to have like something basic on the side, because if me and like my dad share mussels or something, she can't have any, because obviously she's allergic, so it can be a bit of a difficult sometimes.
Yeah, no, that makes it difficult when we've got allergies. Yeah. Okay, so you mentioned that you don't live at home. So how are you finding with all the food costs?
Yes, definitely. I think food's my biggest expense, because sometimes, you know, when you just like fancy a snack, you kind of go to the shop and buy it, and obviously not living at home is paying for it yourself. So it's definitely been hard trying to like ration food, and like about like every 2 weeks I do like a big food shop, and then I probably cook like 10 or so meals and then freeze them and eat them throughout the week. So I think in terms of budgeting, that is definitely a good thing to do, because you can like bulk buy stuff and then obviously have a lot of food.
Don't you get bored with eating the same food?
Yeah, that's kind of my biggest issue. I'll be like, oh, I've got a lot of spag bowl in the freezer, but I just won't want it. So I'll end up like going to the shop or getting a takeaway or being like, does anyone want to go out for dinner? So sometimes it works, but it really depends on my mood with. But yeah, that's the one issue I think being away from home, is you don't just have like cupboards of free food. You have to go out and purchase it yourself. But yeah, how do you find the cost of food?
Well, I've got a big family, so it's got very expensive. Where I used to maybe spend £50 a week, I'm now spending maybe 100.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Okay, so what do we think then? Did she meet all the criteria in that task?
I think she did. I think having macaroni cheese on a shepherd's pie is an automatic pass, to be fair. But no, I think all the criteria on there is I think she, as well as putting forward her opinion, she also respects others and asks the question of others. And like looking through them, I think she's quite respectful in the others when they talk as well. She's obviously probably the most talkative of the three. But she's probably like the only one possibly is like 1.8 where it says respect it. There's a couple of times she probably jumps in a bit too early, but I think like majority of the time she's probably quite respectful in what they say, and then she builds on the conversation from that. But yeah, I think majority of it, I think it's fine. I think it's all good.
In addition to that, that actually sounded like some of the speaker and listenings that we actually
we've definitely had something like that.
Yeah.
Like the spicy mango conversation, we definitely
definitely.
Well, it shows you that that's a good one to use, because actually you can sort of talk and talk and talk about it, really, can't you?
Yeah.
And it sort of went off on a bit of a tangent as well. You know, they ended up talking about food costs and stuff, which is quite a good thing to sort of delve into, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
What about you, Abdullah?
was going to say, yeah, I do agree with Matthew there. I think she has achieved every criterion. And I think the only one I would be slightly concerned about, and that might just be me being harsh there, but L1.5, express opinions and arguments and support them with evidence. I always think it's a bit challenging, to assess this criteria on candidates, especially when they're talking about something that's personal to them. So a lot of her stuff there that she was talking about wasn't a personal topic. So it's hard to sort of get them to give an evidence to, to support what they're saying. But I think really, other than that, I think, yeah, she has met every other criteria. It's just that the evidence bit, is missing. And if I was giving her feedback, I would probably just say to her that the food that she said that she prefers or she likes or something, or the things that she mentioned, she could maybe just, or I think the restaurant that she mentioned that she loves going there or something in Portugal, she could have maybe just given us some sort of evidence to say that, oh, there's tons of reviews online about this, that says it's a brilliant place to go to. So that could be used as a form of evidence to say that it's a good place to go to.
Yeah.
I think other than that, I think she has met every other criteria. I would say, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think supporting it with evidence for a discussion is quite difficult, especially at level 1. I guess it's more just about having an opinion and then sort of explaining why could be classed as evidence for that. Like when she said about like her food, right at the end, she said her food spending had increased. She's got a large family and stuff. But yeah, no, I think, she's met all the criteria. Nothing else to add, I don't think. Has anybody else got anything they wanted to add? No? Okay, let's move on. Let's just get this one ready. Right, we move on to level 2. So what I realised actually when I was setting this up earlier is that because I only sent you Tim's presentation, you're not able to check whether he asked others questions. So that was an error on my part. So that would be 2.1, 2.2 and 2.4. So actually you're only looking at 2.5, 2.7, so whether he's communicating effectively and using appropriate language, and then whether he responds effectively to questions in this one.
But brilliant trick to heat your home in 90 seconds and save thousands of pounds on your heating bill this week.
This is a Pearson Functional Skills Speaking Listening.
You hear that okay?
Yep, we can hear that.
And communicating assessment. We are doing level 2 presentations with question and answer sections. My name is Lottie.
I'm Will.
I'm Tim, and I'm going to be talking about the royal family today, specifically the Queen. So, this is the Queen, I'm sure you all know. And something I'm sure you also know is we recently celebrated her Platinum Jubilee, which is 70 years of her in office or on the throne. Some other previous Jubilees she's had are silver, which is 25 years, gold, 50 years, and diamond was 60 years. I'm sure you remember that one. So yeah, Platinum Jubilee, great excuse for everyone to get together, really. I'm sure there were a few parties, a few gatherings. I think there was a big one in London celebrating the Queen. So it's a fantastic occasion. And yeah, it's nice for everyone to unite in some patriotism, and as everyone celebrates the Queen and everything she's done, and just our traditions, our British traditions. Yeah, it's just it's a nice little uniting occasion. But who else is in the royal family? It's not just the Queen. You may know some of them, you may not know others. You may be aware of some controversy as well involving some of these characters, and also some rich history. Diana was very well loved, and other people not so much. You'll catch William and Kate at Wimbledon every year, so we'll see them in a couple of weeks. Harry and Meghan have left the country, unfortunately, but they will be missed. Okay, so that's the family tree. But you may be asking, what do they do? I know who they are, but what do they do? Well, the Queen has many diplomatic duties. She's actually visited over 100 countries total in her reign as the Queen, to go and talk to other diplomats and discuss British interests and how they align with other countries. So it's great. She goes all around the world and talks to other people, and she remains neutral the whole time. And she's just a great diplomat, really. Just kind of keeps our interests at heart, and keeps a nice link with other countries, which is nice. The Queen also receives and answers letters. You may think, well, she's got a very busy schedule. How's she got the time to do that? Well, when you turn 100, you'll get a letter in the post from the Queen, which I'm very much looking forward to, saying congratulations, you're 100 years old. So, yeah, good on the Queen for doing that. And they also, well, maybe not the Queen, but you'll catch other members of the royal family maybe cutting ribbons throughout the UK, if maybe a local school opens, or maybe a small business.
All right, we'll just skip to questions. I think we've heard enough. Here's presentation.
Influence on our culture, and I don't think they will be going anywhere anytime soon. So thank you for listening to my presentation.
Thank you.
Have you got any questions?
Yes, I do. How much power does the Queen have over the government?
So, in general, when it comes to passing laws, she can't actually deny any passing of laws. If they want to pass, if Parliament want to pass a law, they go to the Queen and say, "This is our law. We want to pass it." She has to say, "Yes, okay, that's a new law." But she does have the power to dissolve the government. Not entirely sure what that entails, but she does have that power. But that probably won't happen just because it will be too controversial. So she does have power, but she probably won't really use it.
What's the Queen's full name?
Queen's full name is Queen Elizabeth Alexandra Mary Windsor.
Okay. Okay, what do we reckon to Tim then? Did he meet the criteria? How was his presentation?
I'll let you go first this time, Abdullah, if you want. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I would say certainly did. Apart from the humor that the things are in there, I think yes. If we look at the criteria, so L2.5, to communicate information, ideas, and opinions clearly and effectively, providing further detail and development if required. I'm not too sure about the bit where he says providing further detail and development if required, but I felt like he did communicate effectively. The bit about the slide that said what the duties and responsibilities of the royal family, I think he didn't quite explain the duties of the diplomats, and the Queen having visited 100 countries and speaking to other diplomats and all that. I think that was quite useful there. Good piece of information there. I think, has he used language effectively? Yes, appropriate language has been used there, definitely. I'm not too sure about the question. So L2.3 says respond effectively to detailed or extended questions. I think when the girl asked him about the powers of the Queen and how much powers does she have in terms of passing or rejecting a law, I think he could have answered that better. but I think instead of they sort of diverted into the country, she has the power to dissolve the country, which is a fair point, but it didn't. It's sort of like he sort of drifted away from the question, is what I'm trying to say. I felt like he's probably used as a thing to escape because he didn't know how to answer the question.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think other than that, he did meet the other two criterias. Yeah, I really enjoyed it actually. Yeah.
He didn't know how to answer that. I think he was a bit hesitant at times.
Yeah.
I mean, he was definitely a good communicator, and
definitely
he passed the criteria. And I think it's good that he had a bit of humour and stuff in there because it made him likeable and engage him. But he was a bit hesitant, which showed that he probably didn't do quite as much research as he probably should have done. So then he didn't know how to answer the question. But rather than just saying, I don't know how to answer the question, he actually attempted to do it. So in terms of meeting the criteria, yeah, I think I'd give it to him.
Yeah.
What about you, Matthew?
Yeah, I think agree with Abdullah. I think a couple of the questions there were quite closed ones, weren't they? I think especially the ones, what's the Queen's full name? I think there's not really much you could have done about that. But I think it's one of those where we're said to like prepare the questions, aren't we? Like making sure that the questions are prepped so they're quite open ones and you can talk about it for 20-30 seconds each. But yeah, I think the presentation was good. He covered a lot. He's got quite good vocabulary as well for a level 2. It's not just good, bad. It's like he's using pretty good adjectives in there to help him with it. And yeah, I think one of the audience members was actually laughing throughout the whole of it. So he did well. So he did do well to try and keep his concentration and not fall into that trap. So yeah, I think agree. I think 2.3 is probably the only iffy one. I think the other two are no doubts. Yeah.
Great. So we're all in agreement that he meets the criteria. Excellent. Yeah, and as you say, he managed to get through it even with Will, who we're about to look at, giggling throughout the whole thing, which was a bit mean, wasn't it? Okay, right, let's get the next one ready. Okay, final one then, formal discussion. We are looking at Will, the giggler. We won't watch all of it because it's quite long.
Skills, speaking, listening and communicating assessment. Today we are doing level 2 discussion and the topic is studying. My name is Lottie.
I'm Tim.
I'm Will.
Thank you. So what are you studying at the moment?
I am studying maths at uni. I'm in my final year. I had to redo, I was on a 3-year course, but I had to redo my last year. So I'm currently on my 4th year for that.
Did you find it hard? Is that why you're redoing the year?
It came around to my 3rd year, and in the first semester exams came and I didn't show up to exams, which is actually a good advice that I'd have for new students. I'd say show up to your exams and try very hard, and yeah, you've got a good chance of getting a good degree. But if you don't show up to your exams, then it won't turn out very well. But yeah, fingers crossed for the second time around. Yeah.
Will, what are you studying?
I'm studying furniture design and make. I'm in my 2nd year, but I've had to redo the year because I failed it.
Did you find that hard as well?
Yeah, it's very difficult.
Studying's hard. So how did you find your first year when you started uni? Was everything really new? Did you?
Yeah, it was definitely a very new experience. It's very different to school. So school, there's a lot more kind of forced structure where you have to turn up to each lesson, and if you don't turn up to a lesson, they'll know about it. And there's obviously a lot more subjects where you don't really want to study. Like for me, it was French. I had to do some French. There's a lot of subjects you don't want to do. But uni, you pick your subject, and you can choose whether to go to lectures or not, and they're not really going to chase you up. But it's going to hurt you in the long run.
That sounds like a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, that's the thing. It is a lot of responsibility. Yeah. What about you? What are your experiences?
So I'm doing a BTEC in business administration, and I'm doing that as an apprenticeship.
Okay.
So I'm doing it alongside work.
Okay.
So I have to balance the two, which can be challenging.
What are the main challenges involved with that?
I think time management. So making sure that I have time to do my job, but also to study for my apprenticeship and make sure that I pass things.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't have so many exams. It's mostly coursework, so I have to write essays, and I have deadlines for those.
Okay.
So I have to make sure I meet
Yeah,
those.
coursework is my least favourite.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of coursework.
William, do you have exams or coursework in yours?
I have coursework. I have to do sketchbooks for the furniture I've designed, and I have to make it as well, and that's all coursework.
Do you prefer the design or the make?
Definitely the making.
The making.
Yeah.
So you're very creative.
You're hands-on?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, my experience isn't very hands-on. It's mostly learning by yourself and then doing a written exam. So there's not a lot of coursework or hands-on things.
What's your favourite thing about studying your course?
I'd say it's a mix between the freedom and the content. The content I find enjoyable. I've always liked maths and numbers and things like that. So I enjoy learning new things. That's kind of cool, and kind of teaching yourself as well is quite nice. It's quite liberating. And then the freedom. So as I said, no one's going to chase you up if you don't go to lectures, which it's not a great excuse for not going to lectures, but the whole freedom of uni is fantastic, and it's not really something that you're likely to experience in any other part of your life.
It gives it gives you the ability to kind of run your own schedule.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Which can be a bad thing as well, because I'm not the best at, as you said, time management is tough.
It's very hard.
And sometimes having someone to tell you when to do certain things is helpful.
Yeah. So otherwise, sometimes I plan lots of social things a bit too much.
Yeah.
And then I see my friends a lot, and then I have to also squeeze in work and study.
Yeah.
So,
and then that can lead to cancelling on social events as well.
Wow, I wouldn't do that.
Yeah. Priorities.
William, is there anything you dislike about your course?
Yeah, probably the sketchbooks, because we have to have our own design, and then we have to put it into a sketchbook so that we can reach the design that we already have. So it just feels a bit pointless, and so you just want to go into the making.
Yeah. So you work backwards from the design.
Yeah, it's.
So it feels kind of fake as well.
Yeah.
Is there anything you dislike about your course then?
Okay, I'll leave it at that. Okay, so Will, did he meet the criteria from what we saw?
I don't think he's met many of them. From that 5 minutes especially, it's very much a case similar to the level 1 discussion where task 1 where it just needed prompting the whole time, and he didn't really make things happen, so to speak, in terms of just getting in there, because once again it was a conversation between two people and having a third person in there. So looking at the learning outcomes, 1, maybe 2, you could argue 2.8 relevant and constructive contributions, where he was talking about what he experiences on his course. There's some good effective language at 2.7, but he sort of just is descriptive. It doesn't really go into detail with it, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he only spoke when he was spoken to, didn't he? So in terms of being able to evidence moving the discussion forward or interjecting, that just wasn't there. So definitely 2.10 and 2.8. What about you, Abdullah?
I was going to say agree there with both of you. It mostly just, to me, felt like if you didn't sort of, prompt him and didn't ask him a question, he'd probably just sit there quietly, didn't say nothing throughout. So I feel like, yeah, if you look at the criteria, maybe I would probably just say he's probably just met maybe L2.5 and maybe L2.7. That's it. I think the rest of it, I would say it's a bit of a question mark there whether he's achieved them or not, because just didn't speak much. Then there's nothing there to sort of evidence those criterias. Yeah, and it's really hard to sort of assess one of these type of questions, or when you're given a candidate like this who didn't speak much, it just becomes really hard for you to assess and say whether they've met the criteria or not.
Yeah, I agree. And I think for 2.6, again, that is a difficult one because of this whole persuasive evidence factor. And at level 2, you would expect to see something a bit more substantial in there in terms of evidence. So can you back it up with some sort of facts or figures or research or something? And obviously the thing they were discussing, studying, I'm just not sure that that's that appropriate for level 2, because there's only so far you can go into it, and really it's opinion based. There's no evidence really behind that.
Talking about studying at level 2, it's like talking about my recent birthday. It's just not a topic that you would use on a level 2. Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, I think it's probably okay for level 1, but for level 2, I'd be looking for something, even if you change the title to, does studying, does homework contribute to success, or so, and then you could look at studies where where they've studied independently or done homework independently, has that contributed to getting a better grade and things like that. You really need it to be a lot more sophisticated, and they need to show that they've researched it and that they can back it all up with evidence.
I agree with you. If the question was more focused, as in, like you've just said, even things like how does coursework impact your learning or something, something that's more focused, then there's an argument, there's things you could talk about. But I think that question was very sort of broad. It was just a generic thing that they were talking about. And yeah, definitely doesn't meet the criteria at level 2, I'd say. But here's some things somehow it does. Yeah,
I know. No, I don't agree. I don't agree with all of that. I mean, 2.5 yes, 2.7 probably okay. I don't think he met 2.6. He definitely didn't meet 2.8, 9 and 10 in my opinion. And again, we don't always agree with the audit body, so that's fine as long as we all agree, which we do. So that's perfect. Okay. Anything anybody else wants to add? Any questions? I know we've got 2 people sitting there quietly in the background. Hopefully you've benefited from
dived in at the deep end, haven't they? Yeah. Can't wait for speaking and listening.
Yeah, that's good fun. It's good fun. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time. We'll finish off 10 minutes early. And I look forward to seeing all your assessments coming through.
Lovely. We can't wait to do them either.
Thank you very much.
Cheers, Jen.
Thanks everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye now.